Alright, so Attack of the Clones time. Attack of the Clones, it's weird watching this one again, because in my last video for Phantom Menace, I actually really enjoyed it for its uniqueness and just being a really interesting movie, whether people like it or not. And watching Attack of the Clones, this one is really strange, because I know for a fact this movie in particular, out of all the Star Wars movies, at least the George Lucas ones, this is one of the movies I think the most where he spent the least amount of time making this movie, like developing it. Like, I think looking at this middle chapter, it's weird in this prequel trilogy because Episode 1, I think, is a fine setup to this different kind of trilogy for the Star Wars universe. And Episode 3 I love, and I love how they continue on with that. But in Episode 2, it's so weird because it feels like it's not as well done in the story department, if that makes sense. My biggest complaint for Attack of the Clones, honestly, is that it's pretty boring. Episode 1, at least, I thought was fascinating. Like, even if there's stuff that people don't like about it, I feel like people remember it. Attack of the Clones is probably one of the least memorable Star Wars movies, but I still enjoy things about it. I think on Letterboxd, I rewatched it and gave it a 3 out of 5. It's still a solid movie. It's still a solid sci-fi movie, and it's creative, and it's still cool, but I don't think it's creative as Phantom Menace. And the biggest complaint, I guess, I've got for this movie is the visuals, and it's weird to say that because Episode 1 has CG visuals like this, and so does Episode 3. But this one in particular, like, the visuals, for me, just didn't hold up as much. At least in Episode 1, they had a bigger mixture of CG versus practical. Like, they had both in Phantom Menace, and in this one, there is definitely practical, but it's way less noticeable. There's a lot of CGI, especially whenever you get to the Geonosis stuff, where when Anakin and Padme are in that factory, like, that is just pure all CG, and it's weird watching it. And I know that there's other scenes where, like, they've got the Coruscant, like rooms, and they're all CG, but they at least look a little better. But in the Geonosis factory with all the creatures and stuff, it just really stood out to me. And also at the ending battle, where, like, they're in the arena, there's like almost everything is just CGI. With an overlap of, like, probably a practical prop of the Geonosis area, but just with CGI characters. Because I know that George Lucas did this in all 3 of the prequels, where he'd have practical effects of, like, big areas, like whenever you see a building, a couple times in the prequels, it's just like a practical building, but it's small, and people don't recognize that. They think it's just CG, which I think is pretty cool that he did that with some of this stuff. But there is just a lot of CG in this movie where it honestly took me out of it. Like, there was too much. And it's weird to say because Phantom Menace had a lot of it, but it had a lot of practical as well. And Episode 3 had a lot of it, but I feel like Episode 3 was still in the 2000s era of CGI, but the CGI was a couple more years ahead than Attack of the Clones. And I felt like George Lucas went all ham with the effects in this one, as opposed to Phantom Menace, half practical, half CG, because apparently, according to online, Phantom Menace has more practical effects than the original trilogy combined, but with added CGI overlay on everything. Or not everything, a lot of stuff, but not as much as Attack of the Clones. And Attack of the Clones, visually, is my biggest complaint. Like, seriously, like, I think it's the biggest complaint for me, and I think it's pretty boring. Like, it's a boring Star Wars movie. It's the one I watched the least as a kid. And it's still the one I'll watch the least now. But if I watch these movies, I watch them all together. I don't really pick one to watch, unless it's like The Last Jedi, because I love that one. But usually I don't just pick a random Star Wars movie and watch it on its own. I usually watch the whole series, if I want to. So that's my biggest complaint. I could also complain about the Anakin Padme stuff. But to me, that's kind of a mixture of George Lucas didn't spend as much time as he should have with these characters. Like, there are some moments of the Anakin and Padme romance that I actually liked. I liked the scene a lot where they're in the grass in that Naboo area, and, like, Padme's talking to him because she's a senator. She's talking about this is how we should lay down, how we should run this business, how everything should be ran. And I like that Anakin says, like, they should be forced to, and it's a cool, like, allude to like him being what he becomes as Darth Vader. But I really like that he jokes with her, and then she's like, "You're messing with me, aren't you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm too scared to mess with the senator." Like, I like that scene, and I wish that the movie had more moments of that with these characters, because it's weird because Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman are really good actors, but it's weird to see them. It's kind of like in the original trilogy, where the original trilogy, all these other actors, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, like, they all are good actors as well, but like they just come off as cheeseballs sometime, and this one definitely does that, where the way that they talk to each other with the romantic dialogue is very strange. Like, it comes off in a way that people make fun of it. And I think what George Lucas was trying to do was make it kind of like a fairy tale type of way they talk to each other, like a forbidden love. Like, they shouldn't be together, but then they get together. And their dialogue is just strange. I don't think it's bad. I don't think their acting's bad. I just think that the movie falls into a category of unintentionally funny with how it's portrayed. And I know a lot of people don't like these characters and the romantic scenes with them, but I think that for what they had, they did okay. Like, it was serviceable, but it really fell into the category of weird, like, romantic kind of thing. Just how it's portrayed. But it stinks, because I feel like, again, like in Phantom Menace, George Lucas just needed a little more restraint and would have taken out some stuff, or maybe added in some scenes. Like I said, they should have had more scenes with Anakin and Padme that would have kind of at least elaborated more to me, maybe, to make it a little more better. And I really like the romance more in Episode 3, and I like that feels more like a fairy tale kind of thing in Episode 3, like how they talk to each other, but I felt like it worked a little better than in Episode 2. But the visuals, the romance, those are the only criticisms I think I really have, and it's kind of boring. But criticisms aside, so, like I said, this is a run-of-the-mill, like, middle-of-the-road Star Wars movie. Like, it's one of my least favorites, and I do have things I appreciate about it. I appreciate that it starts like a neo-noir-like film, where Obi-Wan is going to find out who tried to assassinate Padme. I thought that was pretty cool on his part, on this story with Obi-Wan. I thought that was interesting. And I thought that gave the movie a little bit more of an oomph to it, as opposed to the Anakin and Padme scenes, the anime scenes. that's crazy. I can't believe I said that. But I like how it's a little neo-noir in a way. I keep saying this every time I see the movie, but I really like the editing of Attack of the Clones. I do like, say what you will about the CGI and the dialogue, but like, I like the editing of it. I like how George Lucas and everybody edited this movie, where it really flows very well, but it's still boring. Like, it's still a boring movie, but it's done well in the editing, and I really liked how they do it with all these Star Wars movies, where like it's about a couple different set of characters get separated, do their own thing, and they just do a great job. And I think Attack of the Clones does a really good job of sitting these characters apart and really editing their stories together, even though they're apart. I think that is cool, and I do like that. And they do that in all these movies. Like, they do that with every Star Wars movie. But still, I think that's great. So I like that. Say what we will about Anakin and Padme's romance, but the theme Across the Stars is one of the greatest, I think, romantic, like, themes ever. Like, you've got, in Episode 1, you got Duel of the Fates. That's the memorable music from Episode 1. And Episode 1 has a great score as well. John Williams is great in all the Star Wars movies. Does a fantastic job. But Duel of the Fates is the one everybody remembers. And in Episode 2, Across the Stars is the one that everybody remembers. So whatever you think about the romance, I think that the theme works very, very well despite that. I really love that musical theme. It's just so fantastic. And Episode 2, again, feels rushed, because that's the only different theme to the movie. All the other score is literally almost just Episode 1's score again. If you listen to Episode 1's score and then you listen to Episode 2's score, it's pretty much the same again. Like, there's not that much of a difference besides the big theme, that romantic theme, Across the Stars. So I think that's weird. I don't know why this movie was so rushed comparatively to Phantom Menace and to Revenge of the Sith. Like, this feels like the most rushed out of the three. And I'll tell you what, even though I think this movie is middle of the road Star Wars, it has one of my favorite scenes in any of the movies, and this makes up for the movie, honestly, in ways. With Anakin going to find his mother, who is tied up, and she sees him grown up, and she tries to say she loves him, and then she dies in his arms. And Anakin, and they have a great musical cue where like Anakin just holds her, and then like John Williams swells this musical score where it's got this weird like music where you feel like you're in Anakin's head, like he's breaking and he's gonna go and kill all these Tusken Raiders, and it is a really well acted scene, and it's the best scene with Hayden Christensen. I really love that scene where he meets his mom again, and then she dies in his arms, and he goes and kills all the Tusken Raiders that have her trapped. That is one of the best scenes I think in the franchise. It's so sad that it's in this one that's just middle of the road. I love that. It's perfect. The acting, incredible in that scene. I love it. I really, really like that. And another scene I really like is, despite the CGI, I already complained about the Geonosis like factory scene. I still really love that scene though, and that scene was kind of incorporated at the last minute, I think, where Anakin and Padme are trapped in this factory, Geonosis factory, and they're in danger, and C-3PO and R2-D2 are there as well. And it's just a really cool scene, even though it's so abundant with CG that's so out of date 2000s CGI, 2002. But still, it's a great scene, the Geonosis factory scene. With all the complaining I said, I still really like that scene, despite it being super CGI heavy, and watching it in HD is really kind of weird to watch because you can tell it's complete CG. Really like that. I like that this movie, despite it being boring, I still think it's inventive. I think it's still fun in ways, but I don't think it's very entertaining. Like, it's fun in some ways. And I didn't even speak of the villains yet. So we got Count Dooku and Jango Fett. I think that they both do a fine job. I really like seeing Christopher Lee in a Star Wars movie. That's awesome. He does a good job. He's not in the movie that much like Darth Maul in Episode 1. But I really like that scene between him and Obi-Wan, where Obi-Wan is trapped by Count Dooku, and then Count Dooku says, like, if Qui-Gon was alive, he would have joined me and understood the cause. Like, why won't you join me? And I really thought that was a good mind manipulation thing with Obi-Wan, because Qui-Gon was his mentor. I think that's a really well done scene. Again, there's some well done scenes in this movie, but they're kind of sprinkled throughout. They're not like the whole movie. And, like, I really love that scene, and I think Count Dooku is a good villain, even though he's, like Darth Maul, kind of a toyetic. He's just kind of there. He doesn't have much to do. It's kind of like how Darth Vader was in A New Hope. He really is just there a little bit, and then that's it. So it's definitely one of the things that Star Wars always does, where, like, you've got a villain, like Boba Fett, Captain Phasma. Like, you've always got villains that are there to just sell toys or to just be there briefly. So it's funny to see that with this. Like, Count Dooku, like, I think is good. Like, Christopher Lee is really good in it, but he's just kind of there. And I like how Christopher Lee did Star Wars and did Lord of the Rings at the same time. What a badass. That's awesome. And apparently Christopher Lee, like, lived a great, like, crazy life. Like, he did all this awesome stuff. Like, read it on Wikipedia. He did a whole lot. He lived a great life. So it's just cool to see him in this. Like, that's awesome. And like I said, Jango Fett is really cool. It's awesome to see in The Mandalorian that they brought back Temuera Morrison. That's great. It stinks that they couldn't bring back Daniel Logan, but I mean, he's not the age appropriate like Temuera Morrison was, because he's the actual one, the clone that what everybody looks like. And kind of a side note, I did meet Daniel Logan, and it was really cool, but I was so nervous because I went to a con last year, and it was my first one, and I was so scared. So, like, I barely said anything, but, like, this guy, Daniel Logan, he, like, was bouncing off the walls. Like, he was so happy to be at this con, and it was so genuinely cool to see, like, an actor from the Star Wars movies, and he was so nice and kind, and he was so funny. But I was just sitting there being all awkward because I didn't know what to say to any actors. I'd never met any actors before, and I think he was the first one I met. So it was such a cool experience, but it's cool seeing Daniel Logan in this as well. Like, he's good for this little kid. Like, he kind of has those lines that, like, I don't know, like, it kind of, like most Star Wars movies where, like, this character is just kind of there, but, like, I liked the kid. I liked his performance as a kid. I thought he was good. But pretty much that's it. Like, the villains, I think, are solid in it as well. I did enjoy them. And I did like Mace Windu decapitating Boba Fett. That's awesome. And that shot of a young Boba Fett or decapitating Jango Fett. Young Boba Fett, like, grabbing just the helmet and holding it. Like, I thought that was a great shot. Like, that was a good shot in the movie. But really, that's all I could say about Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones just falls into that category of just being pretty forgettable. Like, it's truly not as bad as people say it is, but I don't think that it's great. I think that it is okay. It's a unique sci-fi movie like The Phantom Menace. Like, it does have enough that I feel like visually makes it stand out, but visually it also just comes off as kind of boring. Dialogue, it comes off as kind of boring. The action, honestly, is kind of boring compared to Phantom Menace or Revenge of the Sith. Like, it's the most boring of the prequel trilogy, but I don't think it's the worst out of all the Star Wars movies, in my opinion. Like, I think it just suffers from being rushed out. And it's weird to say, because the prequel trilogy, like the original trilogy, they came out every 3 years, so I don't get why George Lucas didn't have enough time in this one, because it felt so rushed. Especially in contrast to Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith. Whether you like those or not, I feel like those are more, like, you could tell that those were more done, because this one didn't have as much of a soundtrack. It didn't have as much stuff, like, the Geonosis scene, like, in the factory got added on at the end. The Anakin Padme stuff, I feel like they would have elaborated on more if they had more time. So it's just kind of a rushed movie. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's just the middle of the road Star Wars movie. So I'm glad I got to talk about it again, but it's just whatever. So that's pretty much it for Attack of the Clones. So that's it. I'll talk to you guys next time about Revenge of the Sith, which is one of my favorites. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.